a harsh lesson that I learned coming up early on, playing in bands that, achieved a modicum of hype and success, was there was that feeling of like, oh, okay, we've done something now. And then it's like, but I look back and I'm like, but then what? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you can look back in hindsight and say, clear as day, well, that was obviously an opportunity that could have been taken that wasn't.
Mm.
And there's always more to the story, but that would be my overarching message to 15-year-old Marlon, is just keep doing it, keep pushing through, and act now.
Welcome back, everyone, to episode number 25 of The Johnny Rogers Show. My guest today is a very talented Canadian artist. His 2018 full-length album titled The Circle became critically acclaimed. After reviewing it, the Rock Source magazine said that he had solidified himself as a bona fide rocker with vision and talent to spare. He's been nominated for a Dropout Entertainment Canadian Independent Music Video Award and has released a staggering amount of material at a consistent pace. His newest album, Synestalgia, is available right now on all streaming platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for my friend and yours, Marlon Chaplin. Hey.
Hello. Johnny, how's it going, man?
Good, man. How are you? Thanks for coming on the show.
Of course, my pleasure.
And I kind of hinted at it there in the intro, but your word for today is consistency.
Yeah, I appreciate the intro, by the way.
Yeah.
Consistency. Yes. I mean, I chose consistency because in my short time on this earth, I've found that it's probably the biggest challenge, the biggest beast, the biggest mountain to climb. Anybody can come up with an interesting idea or, can endeavor onto something that pops, but how many people can stay with it even when those peaks turn into valleys, to keep that sort of, that motivation, even when the vision gets a little blurry, I've found to be something that I've had to rein in and sort of train myself to be, consistent with.
Would you say that you're a master of consistency now, or is it something that you're like seeing as, so did you see it as like a weak spot still for yourself? Yeah. And it's just like something you're constantly working on?
Exactly. Yeah. It's something that I recognized I needed to sort of get the crosshairs on if I was going to develop the way I wanted to, professionally, personally, artistically,
Yeah, and there's something to be said too about like definitely remaining consistent with the things that you're trying to do in your career or in your life, like you just said there too. But like, I think it's also super important to make sure that the things that you're being consistent with are also like productive towards the end goal and really what you're doing. But like, have you found it troubling at all to like find consistency in the right ways, perhaps, or are you more so looking at it as like being consistent in any way possible is a good thing? Because I know some people are of that like kind of perspective where they're like, there's no wrong or right. Like even if I'm being consistent at the wrong thing, it's still training consistency. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think it goes back to the working smart thing as well instead of working hard. I mean, you can keep doing the same thing over and over again, and maybe it's not the right thing, right? So realizing what works for you and what doesn't cannot be a challenge within itself. And you have to sort of recognize when, okay, maybe I've been hammering at this one thing a little too long and it's not taking me where I want, or the product, whatever I'm trying to create here isn't coming to fruition. And then you have to reassess. So it's okay to step back and to cut ties with something if it's not working. There's no shame in that. But if something is gaining traction or something inherently instinctively feels right, it's important not to get lazy and complacent and sort of rest on your laurels and say,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay, well, that felt good. I got that little dopamine rush when I did this or got a response to this, and I'm going to sit back now. It's like, no, that's probably the time to double down
Yeah,
and
that's what a
keep going and
lot of
keep
people
pushing and
do.
keep expanding.
So many people.
I know. And
I was just gonna say, so I think it was on the podcast with Dave Marhaj where we were talking about there's this thing that happens where, at least in comedy, people will get like a little bump in their career and they think that's the time that
yeah,
they get to like sit back and chill. They're like, oh, I made
yeah.
it. Like I got this thing. So now I get to like relax. It's like, no, 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 no. Now you have to like
Mm,
really
yeah.
iron out the kinks here, because the last thing that you want is to be like now in this position where you're expected to be the professional perhaps, and because you're not being consistent with the work that it takes to maintain that level of professionalism, you might lose everything on your next opportunity.
Right, right. And I think you said something that really hit the nail on the head, which was a lot of people get a little bit like a little bite of what they're after and they think, oh, I've made it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've found that the artists and just generally the people that I admire, they all generally share a common trait, which is they usually um, put across the idea that they've never quite made it yet still,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
I love
like,
that
oh,
too.
interesting. Like Bob Dylan, there's a great Bob Dylan song called "When I Paint My Masterpiece," and someone asked him once in an interview years ago, "Have you painted your masterpiece yet?" And he said, "I hope I never do."
Wow.
And I thought, well, that's it right there.
There's there's this one story too that I've told a couple times on here already. So sorry for the
Yeah.
people that have already heard it, but I absolutely love the story of who was it? It was on Mark Maron's podcast, and he was talking to Paul McCartney. That's what it was.
Mm,
And he loves asking like older rockers who are now like in their solo part of their career if they think, because most people like old rockers when they move into the solo part of their career now, they have to almost say this is the best stuff I've done. You know, this
right.
catalog, this
That
new album.
obligation.
Yeah, the new album is the best thing ever. That's why
Sure,
you need to go
sure.
get it. And he
Yeah.
asked Paul, "Do you feel that way?" And he goes, "I was in the Beatles." He goes,
Did he say that?
yeah, he goes, "No, that's the best
That's
stuff I
great.
ever did."
No way. I gotta
Like
listen to that one.
he's like, "There's no
Yeah.
way that I could go above
Oh,
that."
that's
Like,
hilarious.
how do I top
Yeah.
that? You know,
Oh my god, that's the best
being
response.
in a band that just changed music, like it's hard
Right.
to argue that the
Like
stuff you're doing now is better than that.
exactly. Like the believability factor would be a little low on that one. Suspension
Yeah,
of
but if
disbelief.
I'm sure if you spoke to the Beatles though, even if they were all alive and all together at right now, they would still be like, we haven't made it. We haven't
Yeah.
found that one sound. I don't think making it for someone really happens until sadly after they've passed. I
Mm.
find it's more so the legacy that you leave behind is when you get like the acclaim almost,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny.
Right.
That's
Right.
kind
Well
of
said.
life. That's just like a great metaphor for life. It's just like
I know.
you're not
It's
going to end up seeing the end results. Don't worry about it.
no.
You'll get it when you're
Yeah.
gone. Like that's
Yeah.
pretty much it.
Yeah. You'll be a legend when you're dead.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just the thing to aim for, right?
I know, right? Like, yeah. I mean, it's the only way you can be immortal is by leaving a legacy,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody thinks they're gonna die. You know. So, yeah, man, I love Mark Maron's podcast, by the way, and I've listened to so many episodes. I'm surprised I haven't heard the Paul McCartney episode.
You know what's interesting though is I haven't actually heard the Paul McCartney episode. I heard
Oh,
him
so
retelling the story on someone else's
okay.
podcast. So
Oh,
even
interesting.
myself, I'd have to go back and find
Right,
where
right.
it was. I wonder if he's actually clipped that, because it was like a story that he was like telling often that I was like, oh my god, this is just too good. Like I tell
Yeah,
everyone, I mean, because I tell every artist, because every artist is in the same thing, and I think honestly, I think a lot of the idea, it's not so much like, because what is making it, you know,
right. Just
making it,
different to
it's
everybody.
different for every person. It could mean like all of your bills are paid by that thing. That could
Right.
be, it could be winning a Grammy. It could be winning
Yeah.
a big award. That's making it. But I think like at the end of the day, even if you've achieved all of those things, the reason why artists don't feel like they make it is, at least the good artists, is because they're always unhappy with the level of work that they're putting out, and they're always trying to achieve more than that, which means that
Right.
their bar and their taste level since they started has just grown, you know? So it's more of a
Right,
reflection of
exactly.
your own taste, and your own like idea of what's good
Yeah,
has changed.
yeah.
You know, the
It's
amateur
funny.
is like just loves their work.
Yeah, no, it's true, man. It's true. It's funny. Before we even had this conversation earlier today, I was thinking about exactly what you're talking about because I was working on something, and well, I'd actually just finished something, and I was thinking about what am I going to do next now,
Mm.
and I thought, well, how can I? It was a painting I was thinking about, and yeah, for those that don't know, I'm doing a series right now where I sit down in front of a canvas with a microphone.
It's very cool.
And yeah, thanks, man. And I'll sing a song off of my latest album while painting my visual interpretation of it. And I have the finite amount of time that the song lasts to do it. And I was thinking today about, well, that's great, but how can I make that better? How can I
Mm.
expand on that? What's another idea? Because this has gotten, a pretty good response, and people seem to be connecting to it. So I thought, great. But then a part of my brain is like, well, I can't do the same thing forever. I can't
Mm.
keep, because there's like always a part of me that thinks, well, okay, this is cool, but it has the potential to get stale.
Yeah,
So
and stale for you too, not even just like your audience. Like
right,
you
right,
might find it like, I don't want to do this anymore. It feels like an obligation, you know?
right.
I have to buy paint supplies, but I'm trying to make this album. You're like, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and then it feels like a slog
Yeah,
potentially, right?
yeah,
You don't want
yeah.
it to get there,
No.
but yeah, but that sort of ties into what we were saying earlier about consistency as well. It's like it's one thing to stay consistent with something, because somebody could say, okay, well, just keep doing that over and over again, and that's you staying consistent. But the idea for me is, yes, continue along this line of thinking, but expand on it at the same time. So
Mm.
you're not only staying consistent, but there's growth there as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea to point out the difference between consistency and repetition.
Well, yeah, because you don't want it
We're
to
so
mainline, right?
confused. Yeah,
You want
yeah.
you want it to do that, whatever it is.
Yeah, you're always
You,
trying to find a new way to grow in whatever it is that you're trying to
right,
remain consistent
right.
at. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's about you know, doing the same thing over and over again, which can feel like mind numbing at times, but it'll only cease to be mind numbing if you keep adding different angles and colors to it along the way.
Hmm.
And then what you have is you have something that is growing. And that's not to be taken for granted, because then that's when I've found in the past people start really connecting to things on a bigger level.
No, 100%. And it's like, it's growing in a way, it's growing from nothing, which I always find remarkable that we never really, as artists, take a second to appreciate is that like everything we've done has come from nothing. Like it's come from us. It's come from like a choosing to grow a plant in your house. Like it's
Uh,
literally starts with that seed of an idea, and then it's about the person who is going to see through that seed all the way until it's a plant, and then remaining consistent with watering it every day and making trimming the leaves and making sure that it's growing in the right direction and getting proper sunlight and air and like all these additional things. But like apply that to your art. Like it seems so easy, but at the same time it's very easy to be distracted too, because you've got the
oh
competition
god, yeah.
culture, the grind culture. How do you deal with like
Mm.
outside influence when it comes to like your own creation and staying consistent?
I've found time and again the well, it's good to be abreast of sort of what's going on. Otherwise, you run the risk of like completely becoming out of touch.
Mm.
But at the same time, I've found that I'm most creative and most consistent within my creativity when I'm kind of blocking out the noise a little bit.
Mm.
And I'm just sticking to my lane and doing what turns me on creatively in my own world, in my own bubble. Because, we live in scroll culture as well. I can pick up my phone at any
Love
time,
that scroll culture.
right?
I love that
It's
so
like
much.
you're just scrolling. It's like, holy shit, what? Look at that. Oh my God.
Yeah,
Like,
wow, they're
and
doing
then you
what?
could be, right. You can become overwhelmed by the amount of content out there,
Mm-hmm.
and it can become confusing and jumbled, and you run the risk of falling into that trap of where do I fit into this? Where's my voice heard? And really, those are the wrong questions to be asking, I think. Um, depending on what you're doing, if you're looking at it
Yeah.
from some sort of business analytical standpoint, and you're looking,
Another thing to avoid too is saying, why do they have that and I don't? You know what I
yeah,
mean?
oh
Like
God, yeah, yeah, yeah.
that is horrible thing to do
It
to
is horrible,
yourself.
and
Yeah.
I feel like I've never really fallen victim to that to a detrimental level, because it just never seemed like I've always taken pride, to be honest with you, in being an individualist and an artist who has his own voice and his own vision. And I think when, like, my favorite artists always created their own world, like one of my
Mm,
favorite bands is the White Stripes. And when they came on the scene and they were doing their thing, it was like, holy crap, like these people, Jack and Meg had zeroed in on everything that it took to be completely insulated in their own world, and they're inviting you in. I mean, they had the color scheme, they had the brother sister thing going on. The music itself was stunning.
yeah.
I mean,
They just were
they,
undeniable. Like
they are undeniable. Yes, like
it's a
that's such a
thing.
key word as well. Like undeniable. I've always gone back to that word myself.
It's such a great word. Like, and it's
Yeah.
a great Steve Martin quote where he says, "Be so
Oh.
undeniable that they can't ignore you."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and it's really that. Like, you don't
Yeah.
have to, scroll culture, like you say, or competition or grind culture, whatever you want to call it. And comparison is the thief of joy. So,
Mm.
really, like, if you are just consistent in what you're putting out and just be so good that they can't ignore you,
Yeah.
like it doesn't matter what everyone else is doing.
That's right.
You
That's
will
right.
now form your own lane for that,
Yeah.
which is like
It takes care of itself.
exactly, yeah, yeah. The rest is just as long as you've got your head down and you've got like a
Yeah.
mission to get to and you keep
Yeah.
going, the rest just comes in. And then you don't even,
Exactly.
the interesting thing is too is once this stuff starts coming in, you don't even really care about it that much as you did when nothing was coming in.
Which
When
is a
not,
good thing.
it's a good thing, right? Like when nothing is
Yeah.
coming in,
Yeah.
sometimes you're like, why isn't stuff happening? And it's because
Right.
like
Right.
it's like, well, you're not working. you know?
Yeah, no, you really get
Yeah,
what you put
yeah.
out.
I kept wondering too,
Yeah,
like years ago, I had all these bad habits of comparing myself to other comedians and being like,
right.
like how did they get on that? And like, wow, they're doing this now, and oh my god, like look at this. And it was really like just it was me looking at the outside sources, seeing what they're getting, and be like, why is that not happening for me? And then
Right, right.
realizing like, oh, you just need to you're not putting anything out. You're not putting anything
Yeah,
out there that would like bring those opportunities in. So
right.
you can't be sitting there like down on yourself for not getting things if you're not putting in the work in the opposite direction.
Definitely not. No,
But it's a
no.
two-way
But
street.
yeah, and I think that comes with age and experience as well, because I fell victim to that somewhat as well early on. But yeah, and I mean, speaking of Paul McCartney sound bites, like he's done some good interviews over the past couple of years, and he was on Howard Stern once. Yeah, and there's another quote that sort of has to do with this that stuck in my head, which was he had a song called I can't remember what it was called actually, but the general vibe on it was everybody else is doing better than me or something like that.
Mm,
Um, and Howard was like amazed that Paul could think that, because he's like, you're Paul McCartney,
yeah.
and he's like, yeah, he goes, even now if I'm too plugged into what's going on, I'll think, oh, what are the Stones doing? What's Dylan doing?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I better get to work, sort of thing. And Howard was like, really? Like even you at this level, at this stage, you still think that? And yeah, it's like anybody can fall victim to it.
Even Steven Tyler would say that he would like a peak of their band. He would still go to like clubs and hang out. Even I think he said even into his like recently, like before COVID, he would just go hang out at like clubs to hear the music that they were playing so that he
Right.
knew like he wasn't out of touch. Like he'd never wanted to be out
Mm.
of touch. He's like, I want to know what's happening so that I can at least have an idea of what the outside world is kind of collectively agreeing is music right now. And then I
Uh-huh.
can form my own art based off of that, but not copying it, but with that
Yeah.
understanding, you know?
But that seems like the right lane to be in, because it doesn't
Yeah.
sound like he was there wringing his hands, being like, "Oh, I better get on
Or
that trend."
stealing like verses and
Or
like, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like that can
yeah,
happen
right.
too, where you're like, oh
Well,
God,
in the comedy world too, right? Like that's a huge thing, isn't it?
comedy is
Stealing
huge.
bits and whatnot.
And it's like you're not even
Ha.
stealing like jokes, you're stealing like potential money. Like there's people
Right,
that
right.
made entire careers off of one joke, like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
one
Like Andrew Dice
joke.
Clay or something, right?
Exactly. Or
Yeah,
Russell Peters like doing his like
yeah,
Just for Laughs gala. There was like a
yeah,
couple jokes in there that became like staples
yeah.
of
Like
what people know him
catchphrases
for.
almost.
Yeah, catchphrases, exactly.
Yeah,
So
like
it's
you can
like,
get that shit printed on a hat or something, and all of a sudden that's mega
yeah.
dollars.
Uh-huh. There's so many
Yeah.
comedians I think that did that route where they didn't want to do stand up anymore and they started just printing bumper stickers.
Really?
Like yeah, just like
Yeah.
every and I like again I always think about this too every time no, I wouldn't say every time I'm everywhere, but like anytime I'm somewhere, I like self-reflecting on like the things around me and realizing that other people created those things. So I'm equally capable of creation. Like, because sometimes you can be like, I don't know, calling yourself an artist, you're like, it's a little tacky.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like
I know what you mean.
there's imposter syndrome
Right.
added to it. Because like your idea of like what a musician
Right.
is or what
Right.
an artist is like this celebrity figure. You can't consider yourself that. Like I'm just me. That's all. But then I look at like
Yeah.
the bumper stickers at the gas station. I'm like, some dude sat
Yeah.
down and wrote all of these out and then called up a company and figured out how to get them on it and then made like a licensing deal for
Mm.
that and then created that and now that's out in the world. It didn't
Yeah.
just come into existence,
Yeah.
you know?
Someone with flesh and bones did that, just like me.
Exactly.
Who's to say I can't do that?
Exactly. And then
Bumper stickers and beyond.
apply that to anything. Yeah. Go maybe
Yeah.
step above beyond on bumper stickers.
Bar's a little low there. Yeah.
Yeah, we've lowered the bar quite low for the audience.
Like, yeah. But no, I mean, imposter syndrome is huge.
Is really real, dude. Like,
Have you felt that much?
oh, all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I'd get like an opportunity or like someone even when I started like making like rap songs at the beginning of 2020, I had this like I was in your space where you're like just I've got blinders on, I'm not looking at what anything else is doing and I'm just gonna do this because I'm passionate about it.
Mhm.
And I had like real imposter syndrome when people were like actually saying it was good, like they enjoyed it, and I was like,
Interesting.
okay, because I still felt like
Right.
I'm in this realm where I'm like a comedian and an entertainer, so I don't know where I stand, kind of with my own art that I'm putting out. And then I just kind of realized like none of these labels matter. Like are you having fun? That's it. Like, is it good? Is the art you're putting out good? Then that's it. Like, just enjoy that. And again, it's like what you said about creating your own world. And I think that's just exactly what I was trying to do, is just like without realizing it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a mental tightrope you walk sometimes. Being creative and sort of like declouding the mind from
Mm-hmm.
any potential viruses that could infiltrate that process and spoil the soup. And even like while creating during the process, it's like a great athlete, being out there on the field or wherever, and having to remain. It's almost like a trance-like state you have to enter to
The
create your
zone.
best work. Yeah, and really what it is it's letting go of your ego.
Yeah.
That's really what it is at the end of the day. And the best stuff is created that way. There's not a doubt in my mind that my finer moments have always been when I've lost myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, And you're like, Josh Homme is another guy who is just like a Rolodex of great wisdom and quotes. And he was saying that the singer should never come before the song. You know, you
Yeah, that's
shouldn't.
huge.
Yeah, if you're up there trying to sell yourself before the song or the bit or whatever it is you've created, then your ego's in the driver's seat, and
Yeah.
the art will suffer because you're in it for the wrong reasons.
100%, because you can't humble yourself if you're the star of the show. You can't
Yeah,
there's no room for that. Like really, your
right.
ego will not allow it. Uh,
So that's up to you at the end of the day, which is a lot of
yeah.
responsibility. But yeah, and it's weird too because I find a lot of times what we're doing is we're trying to get back to that moment that we were first interested in whatever we're doing, and that overwhelming feeling of inspiration and
The
creativity. Just
obsession.
yeah, yeah, and you're trying to get back to that, and
Yeah.
you're along the way you're trying to block out or untangle any sort of cynicism
Yeah, dude.
that's being thrown upon you by whatever industry you're in or other people's opinions or people that maybe don't want you to do well because that exists as well. And it's and sometimes it masked as people who are supporters, right? So that's
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
tricky.
yeah.
So because
Because it could be a supporter who's just like wants you to stay where they like you. They
that's right,
don't
that's
want,
right.
like they like
Yeah, people want you to
I'm
do well, but they don't want you to do that well,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's the
It's
old
very
adage.
true.
But yeah, it's just it's about trying to maintain that control of who you are throughout and what you're trying to say while simultaneously letting go.
Yeah, it's a delicate mix.
It is, it is, it is.
But I think it's
And
like
yeah,
it's something that should not be like you should not be overthinking this sort of
no,
a thing.
no.
If you're listening to this right now and you're somebody who's struggling with like your own art, whatever it might be, don't overthink it. Don't try to apply everything we've said thus far all at once. It's not going to work. just
I think
just try to
this
remember it when you can.
yeah, exactly. This conversation is just coming from, I think, a lot of experience and a lot of years doing what we do.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's humble ourselves. We used to work as seaters at Second City.
Yes, exactly. You sort of came in and out. You were there for a hot minute.
I was there for a hot minute.
Uh,
You've been there. You were there for a
yeah,
while, right?
yeah. I think like I was what was it, three
Three
years? I
years?
was there maybe.
3 years?
I think so. Yeah, something like that. 2.5, maybe 3. But you were there for what, like 8 months,
Not that long.
if that?
I
Not
think
even that
I,
long, like
I
six
think I
months or something.
popped in because I was just really interested in like learning more about comedy, and I thought the idea of
Yeah.
working in like a comedy theater was like, oh, I can really see like how people are seated, like what's the most optimal like way for this to be like laid out, and then getting to watch like a comedy show like every single night was just like fucking amazing to have that as
Well,
your.
it was incredible. I took so much
Oh,
inspiration from working there because, like, not to disparage the music community or to put stereotypes on the music community, but there is sort of a perception, I think, an outside perception of musicians as being sort of layabouts at times.
hmm.
And when I saw how hard the cast worked, or casts that worked at Second City on their process, the writing process, the rehearsal process, performing the amount they performed, and then doing extracurricular activities like voiceover work,
Going
commercials,
to auditions, yeah, like
going auditions, TV shows, and there was like there seemed to be an organizational quality to it that I didn't see a lot of in my industry, and
mm,
it sort of woke me up, to be honest with you. And I thought, man, if they can approach their craft like that, there's no excuse for me not to work that hard and to get more organized and
yeah.
more consistent.
Although we keep bringing it around to the word.
But it's true, man. It's
That's
true.
the fun thing to do with this podcast.
Yeah. Ties it all in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like callbacks. Yeah, no, it's totally true, and it's just
It was
like
great.
it's
It was great.
sad that that it got demolished in
Yeah. I
for
mean,
I
they're
don't know
supposed to.
a condo or something. They're supposed to reopen it, I believe, Comedy Bar, but it's not going to be. I
Well,
thought I heard something about that.
Well,
about like.
from what I understand, the Second City, like the traditional Second City theater, is still planning on opening at 1 York Street down
Oh,
by Scotiabank Arena and whatnot.
okay.
That's still a go. But I believe that the Comedy Bar connection has something to do with people that worked with Second City that also worked at Comedy Bar in like the last couple of years. Second City was around, and I think they're like expanding that.
Gotcha. So they're just like
But,
more satellite shows or something brought to you by Second City,
it's,
like at this other
so,
location,
something like that.
something around that. But that's at least good
Yeah,
news that they're bringing a theater back because that theater was just
yeah.
amazing to look at. You're just
Oh,
like,
it's legendary.
it's
Yeah,
crazy. And then just
right, right.
getting the JFL shows. Was it with you
Oh
where
my
we
god,
saw Wanda Sykes?
Wanda Sykes. That's right.
That was just
Yeah,
like,
yeah. We
Wanda.
saw Wanda Sykes.
We saw
We
the
saw someone
back.
else too.
We saw
Ye-
Margaret Cho and was it Margaret
mhm.
Cho? Yeah, and then also Greg
Yeah, Margaret
Proops.
Cho and Greg Proops was there like several nights, and I met Jeff Ross. That was pretty funny.
Jeff Ross was great too. But the
Yeah,
Wanda Sykes one was
yeah.
so good because we were just
He's a
on
good
our
guy.
break and we're just like walking down the street and I was like, I think that's Wanda Sykes
I
walking.
know.
And you were just like, I don't know, say something.
Yeah.
I just like sort of whispered her name
Yeah.
and didn't turn around. I was like, oh fuck. It's so
I
funny
mean, what
how.
would you have said?
Yeah, exactly. Like she just turns around like, yeah, you're like,
Like,
okay, cool. Like I just wanted to make sure it was you.
yeah, yeah,
Just so it wasn't
exactly,
crazy.
exactly. Unless,
That's
yeah,
another good
yeah,
thing too
yeah.
about like working in that environment.
Mhm.
It's kind of like
Oh God, yeah,
desensitize yourself to celebrity, you know?
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, Colin came in a lot. Colin Mockery was in many a time. I grew up watching him on
Oh
Who's
yeah.
Lines, just like an absolute comedy god. And yeah, it's just great. Just such a
Uh,
cool dude. Like I didn't really meet anybody that was unsavory, and
no.
a lot of comics came through.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There was like because JFL was it JFL or Just for Laughs? JFL 42, that's what it was. They would host
Right.
shows throughout Second City as well. And yeah, not a single, even like the one that blew my mind, honestly, and it
Mhm.
goes back to like what you're talking about witnessing like somebody working so hard,
Yeah.
and like taking that on your own and being like, oh shit, like maybe I need to do that. I saw Greg Proops, who was like an established comedian podcaster. He's
Oh yeah.
before his show even starts, he's walking around like handing stickers to each
Oh
audience
yeah.
member. He was just like
Oh yeah.
giving
That's
them
right. He
little
was. Yeah. Yeah.
gifts, like little
Yeah.
things that were like from the show. And I was like, what?
Right.
That seems like something an intern should be doing for you, or like
Yeah.
at the venue would have done ahead of time while you're chilling in your green room preparing. You know,
Yeah.
like
And he was so in tune with his audience and
so
hands
just
on.
right there. And then even after the show, I saw him in the lobby by himself. He's just talking to people. They're just like
Yeah.
thanking him, and he's just talking to them, just like.
Yeah, and he had all these like really dedicated fans that came out as well, and they had all sorts of like presents for him
Yeah, they were giving him
and like
books and shit. Like,
crafts and stuff. Yeah, I was like, wow, I had no idea that he'd formed that kind of relationship with his audience.
yeah. And that's another reason why these podcasts are so great. And it's like every time I talk to somebody, to come on, if they're a little bit hesitant, because it's like, you're not gonna, not everybody does podcasts. So they're like, one, what's the benefit gonna be? That's always the question is like, well, how is this gonna
Mhm.
benefit me? And anyway, and I'm like, well, you're not gonna get a boost in views. Like
Right,
it's a brand new podcast. This is literally
yeah,
episode number 25.
right.
But like what it will do is cement this genuine conversation of you.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's like your fans, if they want to see more of you, they can just go watch you here on this podcast, or they
sure,
can
sure.
check out clips, and it just humanizes, I think, us a little more and
Yeah,
adds
yeah,
that extra personal benefit. Because I found that at least when I listen to podcasts, I was like, everyone I'm listening to on podcasts, I feel like I know them
hmm
because you listen to so much of their life and it's just so unfiltered and whatever. And it's like I really wanted to build that sort of relationship with the audience that I do have. Just let them in. I'm putting everything out there anyways. Just like, everybody come in. These are my friends. This is Marlon, who I worked with, who
yeah.
I think is incredibly talented, and I want to shine a light on you.
Right, right, right. Well,
Yeah,
podcasts are some of the coolest things to come out of this the last however long they've been around, what, like a
Mm-hmm.
decade, maybe
They've been
over a
around,
decade.
yeah. But
I
now it's
think
like mainline. Now it's like super easy to do and anyone can do it, you know?
sure, and we're entering that oversaturation period, but because it's like the amount of music that's out there as well.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean,
Anybody with $30 can submit to Spotify if they want to. It doesn't
yeah,
mean their music is like amazing, you know?
no, but I am
Yeah.
grateful for all these amazing podcasts, like these long form podcasts that have come out, where I'm hearing all sorts of people that I admire in these in depth, sort of like looser,
It
not
feels like a
like
university education that you'd have to pay for. Like getting to
totally,
hear people who
totally,
have been in your industry for like
yes,
40 years give advice, you're like, oh,
yeah.
thank you. That was free?
Exactly. I
Like
mean,
what?
there are several episodes that I go back
Oh, no
to
way.
listen to, like little sound bites or quotes or just like passages, like whoever it may be, like I mentioned, Josh Homme, like his episode on WTF was just chock full of wisdom. Jack
Wow.
White did Jibber Jabber with Conan O'Brien a few years back. Conan had that YouTube
Oh,
series Jibber Jabber,
yeah.
which is more long form and loose, more like a podcast. And I find that a lot of people, they'll they'll often let things out that wouldn't they'd be more reticent to, or not have time to, on like a late night format, that's or like a morning
Yeah,
show
where it's
format.
like, what are you here to promote? Tell me an
Yeah,
interesting story that's already like loaded up and then cut to commercial basically right from there.
yeah, it's like stock at that point. But
There, I can't remember whose podcast I listened to him on. It might have also been Mark Maron, but
yeah.
Rick Rubin was like,
Oh God. Well, he has a podcast, which is
I
great.
know he has one, and I didn't even like know that before listening to him on this one podcast, but
Yeah,
like I just heard him for the first time on that one pod, and I
yeah.
was like, God damn, this dude is just filled with like knowledge and experience, and you're just blown away. There's
You look at his credentials, and it's like he's lived 5 lives.
Yeah, you're like, you worked with what? With who?
Yeah,
Huh?
and
Like
so
what?
eclectic.
Yeah, right. Like and
Like
it
everything, like from bluegrass to like
hip
rap
hop and
to
yeah, like
rock to like crazy shit, man. Like he's all over the board, and it's all good.
yeah, and just goes to show you like you'd be so undeniable. Like there really can't get like no genre is not gonna work with Rick Rubin given the chance because they
Yeah.
can see that he's been able to do all that. But I guarantee like the first like major genre shift, like people were probably like, I don't know.
Oh yeah,
Like you've
absolutely.
only worked on, this before. I don't know how that's gonna go. And he just had to prove him wrong, basically.
Yeah, another great podcast. Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend.
Mm,
Have you listened to that one?
no.
Oh, it's great. Well, it's Conan's podcast. He's had it for like a year or two, I think, throughout the pandemic. And I was listening to an episode, and he said something that sort of speaks to your point. He said nothing, nothing revolutionary ever looks right in the beginning, or
Mm,
ever is received well off the bat. It takes people a second to wake up to a whole paradigm shift.
yeah. And it's already happened at that point.
Yeah,
Like
and we call those people ahead of their time.
yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And Rick
And
really was ahead of his time, because I can't think of another producer on his level that delved into so many different genres and styles and just didn't give a fuck about it.
didn't care, like didn't think that like venturing into one was like gonna ruin his career.
Yeah,
None of that. Like he was just
no,
so confident in his own ability in producing that he was just like, I'm gonna be fine no matter where I go, as long as people, want to have me there, I guess. There
right.
was
And he didn't overthink anything.
no, it's the overthinking that is the biggest killer of creativity.
It is. He just went with his muse every single time. Like he saw System of a Down in a club in LA and was just like, these guys are fucking crazy. I want to work with them. He didn't think like, oh, will radio play this band, or is this a good career move for me? He's just like, this band fucking gets me off. Let's go. And then they made Toxicity. Just legendary records, left, right, and center.
And it's just like there's another I was trying to remember it and then I just looked it up here.
Yeah.
There was that's what it was. His resurrection of Johnny Cash.
Mm.
That to me is the
Oh my
most
God.
legendary thing that he's done out of anything. You put that up next to anything. You've got literally Johnny Cash could have just been another like name in the music history books,
Yeah.
but not nearly as much of a staple as we today we would consider him as. And I think a lot of it has to do with like Rick Rubin deciding to like
Oh God.
get him to cover, was it Nine Inch Nails covered
Yeah.
Hurt?
Yeah.
And then and that just like brought him back. He was playing like little pubs, like his career was done.
Yeah.
And then he just like Rick just decides he's going to take a chance on this old like rocker who was basically at the end of his career. Like nobody wanted to give Johnny Cash a chance.
No, that's what people forget too, right? Because we take it for granted what Rick was able to do with Johnny. But prior to that, he hadn't had a hit since like 1972 or something.
And it's been a while.
Yeah, he was playing with pickup bands in the 80s and into the 90s, and I don't even think he was really active throughout the 90s, but his 80s stuff just sort of took a nosedive, and he was like
it was such a different sound at the time, though. It's like, what could he have done, you know?
Right, right. His sound became out of vogue, right?
Yeah.
And then he just sort of became a relic in the 80s, and Rick of all people, right? Again, he saw something
and then even saw something in a song that was not something he would do, which is even crazier of a risk.
Like, yes, I mean that's why he's
called Risk Rubin,
a great Risk Rubin, precisely. Yeah. And no, it's great. He said, well, there's a lot of great sound bites from Rick Rubin out there, and you should check out his podcast, Broken Record.
I'm definitely gonna check that out now.
Yeah, Malcolm Glad, he kind of co-hosts it with Malcolm Gladwell a little bit.
Oh wow, it's a powerhouse podcast.
Yeah, it's crazy. But he had a quote when he was working with Kanye on Yeezus, and he's like, I became a reducer instead of a producer.
A reducer.
Because Kanye brought him all this like mangled, jumbled sort of mess, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Which like had a fuck ton of potential, and was just like teeming with like cool ideas and like futuristic weird shit. Because that's like one of my favorite albums of all time.
Yeah. That album knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, and they had something like Kanye came to me. He's like, I have like 3 weeks to finish this record. Like, can you make a record out of this in 3 weeks? And Rick's like, well, I got this other record I'm working on, so we might have to take it in chunks. Or he says something like that. He's like, when does it come out? He goes, no, it comes out in 3 weeks. And he's like, all right. So he's like, he just sat there and started tearing pieces away, and it turned into like this minimalism masterpiece. And Kanye's like, you're a reducer, you're not a producer.
It sounds like something Kanye would say.
Yeah, Rick Reducer.
Kanye too is interesting, and I don't think he gets enough credit, because like when people do give him credit, those people are called like, you know, Kanye West stans. Basically, they're the guys that'll buy the Yeezys and buy everything no matter what he puts out.
Yeah.
But like I think right.
The cult of Kanye, yeah.
I'm not part of the cult of Kanye, but I can appreciate the genius, and which helps you kind of understand the wild side to him as well, like why he's so like every time he does something, the press is all over him. But like, I can't
name
remember
one genius that ain't crazy, right? That's his
exactly line. Right. And then there was like a song that he did where every like instrument in the song was someone's voice. Like it was like, like he took someone just saying something, and then he brought that into the program and made it sound like a guitar. Like, and it wasn't a cappella. It's not like the person was trying to make their mouth sound like a guitar. Anyone could do that. He took someone who was just saying words and distorted it to sound, manipulated it and distorted it to make it sound like that. And once you know that subtlety to like whatever the song was, I can't think of it at the top of my head, but it just makes it so much better. You just like enjoy it so much more, and knowing the work that he like put into it.
Yes. It's like what the Beatles did with Sgt. Pepper. Like they created, they pushed the art form forward. And I have no doubt that in 25, 30, 40 years from now, Kanye will be looked add as the needle mover of this era.
Of hip hop in general, just like
beyond hip hop, man. Like that's what's so cool. It's like culture,
music,
as well.
Fashion, and culture. Really.
Yeah. He's. I mean, there's a song on Twisted Fantasy where he works with the producer Mike Dean a lot. Mike Dean's sort of the guy behind a lot of the harder edged stuff that appears on Kanye's albums. Like he did a lot of Yeezus. Like all the really harsh guitar sounds are usually Mike Dean. And I believe he co-produced what's that song? Let's have a toast for the douchebags. Have a toast for the assholes. Let's have a toast for the every one of them. I know what's it called? Let's have a toast for the Runaway.
Yeah, I had to. I searched toast for the douchebags.
And
Runaway was unreal. Just that single piano note, ding, 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 and just carried on from there. You're like, oh my god.
But the outro, dude, the outro is totally what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Where Kanye is just like doing this improvised vocal scatting, pretty much, and it sounds like a guitar solo. And for I thought it was a guitar the first time I heard it, and then I found out that it was actually Kanye just going like, and then Mike Dean got in there and manipulated it and distorted it and put all this compression on it and God knows what else, and turned it into like an iconic guitar sound, right? So like you said, he's just like pushing the genre of hip hop forward.
Yeah, and it's feels like so cool to be a part of it, and there's so many like haters out there that it just it's like all you can do is really just like appreciate these things, and then like we did with working at Second City, like apply what you can to your own. I think that's really the point of like consuming any bit of culture, is like, how can I use this to inspire my own art, or use this to inspire my own like passion in a way.
Yes. Another thing that Dylan said was the most an artist can possibly hope to achieve is to inspire. That's the highest level that you can reach, is like, can you inspire somebody else? And I believe that.
There's some musicians that inspired me, but for like the wrong reasons. Like when I decided that I was going to start writing like hip hop songs, essentially, I did it out of like hatred for what I was hearing. You know, I was like, I don't like.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They inspired me to make my own music because I was like, I don't like any of this shit I'm hearing.
I
was like,
what not to do.
I was like, this is all garbage. I'm gonna make something that I enjoy listening to. And then finally,
that's how punk came
to
be too.
Yeah. That was exactly how punk.
All those punk musicians.
Revolt.
Yes, as you know, man, that revolt against the big stadium type thing and disco and the singer-songwriter thing they thought was getting too bloated, and they thought, we're going to kick that.
That would have been a fun transition to be a part of, like the end of disco and like the beginning of punk. Just people lose their minds over like what they were witnessing, like coming out of this. You're just like, Jesus Christ. And then seeing like the scene in like Seattle and like what that became, and you've got like Nirvana and the Sex Pistols, and you're like, Jesus. And then
I think back then people were much more divided when it came to genres.
Oh,
you had your own clique and whatnot, and like, you know, if you like punk, there's no way you could associate with someone who likes disco and vice versa. And now we live in a time where like everything is a melting pot, and I think it's great. Actually, it's a very good thing.
Yeah.
But I think part of that back then had to do with the fact that everything was new.
You know, that is true. Like even in terms of music, you think of like the evolution of it. It's not that long.
No, God, no.
Like,
I mean, just look what the Beatles did in 7 years.
Yeah.
You know, they went from I Want to Hold Your Hand to Tomorrow Never Knows in 3 years, I believe.
And that was like,
maybe
again,
less.
Not even that long ago. Like it's in the grand spectrum of things. It's not like we're talking about a time 200 years ago.
Right.
It's like within 100 years they did this.
It's like for like 300 years there was classical music.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there was like.
I want to know what was before that. Just nothing. Just like clinking rocks.
No, as crazy as it sounds, I often wonder.
Yeah. What the world was like
enough to
before
call it
music.
often, or what the first music was really like.
Yeah.
Like the first few years that humans discovered that you could create music. Can you imagine?
That would have been a trip.
Oh boy, that would have been a trip.
Like that would have been like the new drug on the scene. It would have been
Yes.
probably viewed as the same way because like
Yeah.
there's this great podcast that we're talking about podcasts all the time here, but there's I don't think that they've released any more episodes, but it's such a great idea. It was called the Pessimist Archive. And
Okay.
basically what they did was they looked back at like inventions that we would now be like trivial about, like what people were mad about that, what are you talking about? And he goes over the full history of how people were like fighting for it not to happen, like
no way, like inventions and stuff.
yeah, like the invention of like the street lamp, like the idea that there would be a lamp outside that would always have a light on. People were like, that's the devil, how are we gonna know when it's time to sleep if there's always lights on? Like they were so against it.
Doesn't that just go? Doesn't that just speak to people's like inherent need to just be negative right off the bat?
Yeah, right.
Like, you know,
always find a problem
what's wrong with something.
Yeah.
So much easier to be negative, and find
it's
a problem.
So easy. Yeah, and it's just such a it's something that's been happening for like thousands of years. So I could imagine the first person that like made a song, everyone was like, yeah, but like, what are you gonna do with that? You know?
And
like,
what were they writing
the birds make songs too. Like, you know, should we pay them? Like, they're probably just.
I know, right?
Yeah, and what were they singing about? What were they writing about? Like, when
probably the same things we're writing about today: sex.
Yeah,
and
the
war.
Core, sex, war, money, like those. Money,
goods and services.
Goods and services. I guess you'd say. Gold coins. Just writing about how many gold coins you want. I was really getting the bag back in the day.
Even before that, they're talking about like how many coconuts do you have? So.
Yeah. How many coconuts for a banana? I always trip out over like, who was the first crazy motherfucker that made an electric guitar? You know, like that just carved out that piece of wood, strapped on those strings.
Yeah.
And just was like, you know, trying to figure out a way that they can make.
Well, yeah, I mean the electric guitar is not that old.
That's what I mean. Like it, but even that, even though it's not old, like that freaks me out even more. It's It's more of a recent thing. It's like what in like the
the last 100 years, right?
Well, the last 100 years,
maybe more, maybe like 130 years.
Some person just like us was like, I'm gonna make this new instrument.
Yeah, I think like just after the turn of the century, the electric guitar was made, and it pissed people off.
Oh yeah,
unsurprisingly.
It's noisy. It's not classical.
Yeah.
It's not a real instrument. Like they would probably just say all these mean, horrible shit.
It's funny. Humans have like this inherent need to continue pushing forward and create new things. Yet at the same time, we're always angry when it happens.
But I think that's what creates the best shit. Because it's like if we just were so accepting of every new idea, oh God, like what would the world look like, right? Like it'd probably look like a Walmart where like you walk in and there's like something for everything. You're like, well, this is useless. Who needs that? Like who's inventing a French fry holder? I don't need that. What do I need this in my house for? A French fry holder?
If every invention just made a past Dragon's Den.
Yeah. You're like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
they need to have a lot more junk in the world.
Yeah. So I think the negativity like serves its purpose, but like the idea is if you are creating something, don't even look at that. Don't even like feed into that. Any comment, positive or negative.
Sure. And then critical thinking is necessary for progress. But, we need to keep it in check at the same time.
Keep it in check always. A common question that I like to ask a lot of my guests, it's a question you hear a lot in the world, but it's if you could call 15-year-old Marlon, give him a little piece of advice on what the future looks like.
Yeah.
What would you say to him?
Just do it. Just act now. Do that thing that you want to do. Don't, it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning of the conversation. Don't rest on your laurels. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth, that kind of stuff. Take advantage of your opportunities and expand on them, and don't take them for granted because they're not just going to magically come around. again, just keep working, keep producing, just keep going. And again, like a harsh lesson that I learned coming up early on playing in bands that, you know, achieved a modicum of hype and success was there was that feeling of like, oh, okay, we've done something now. And then it's like, but I look back and I'm like, but then what? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you can look back in hindsight and say, clear as day, well, that was obviously an opportunity that could have been taken that wasn't. And there's always more to the story, but that would be my overarching message to 15-year-old Marlon is just keep doing it, keep pushing through and act now.
Yeah. I think that's important too for anyone listening here is just like, it doesn't matter what age you're at right now. If you have that idea and you have that passion that you want to move forwards on, the point is move forwards on it because the world is not going to wait for you.
No, it's not. It's really not. In fact, not only is the world not going to wait for you, it's accelerating at light speed past you.
Which can feel like a lot, but at the same time, it's like, just do it. And then you'll be so focused on the thing that you're doing that the world passing you by at light speed is not going to matter to you.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And let me be clear. That's not to say that you need to keep up with light speed. That's not the point. But the world moves very quickly and culture moves extremely fast. And if you are doing something creative and you want to be a part of that culture, then you gotta keep working.
100%. I'm gonna share just because we're coming up on an hour here. Everyone, go check out marlonchaplin.com. Got all your goodies on there: press, video, music, news. Also, the album that I mentioned at the start of the episode, Synestalgia. Is that how you pronounce it? Am I saying
you got it, man? Yep.
Nice.
It's a portmanteau of synesthesia, which is to see color through sound, and nostalgia.
I love that, man. What's your favorite record on the album? Just for people listening, if they want to go check out one.
Favorite track?
Yeah.
My personal favorite track is probably Immaculate Reception, the third track.
All right.
That's my personal favorite, but there are other tracks that did really well, like Weights and Feathers and Slipstream.
Nice. I always want to tell people I'm like, tell me your favorite. What's the one that you're like?
Yeah, that's my personal. That's my go-to. Immaculate. The outro, especially, is like it's like being high.
I love it. Something you're proud of. And Marlon.Chaplin on Instagram as well.
That's right.
Which is where you put up these awesome videos of you painting while you're performing songs off your record, which is just like another whole reason why I wanted to have you on here, is just because I thought that was such a cool idea that I had not seen before. And I was just like, man, it inspired the hell out of me. I'm like, we can do anything we wanted to.
Absolutely, man. And that's the most interesting stuff.
Yeah. So, is there anything, any final words you want to leave the audience with? Yeah,
just think beyond. Just if an idea comes to you that sparks some sort of fire within you, but there's another voice coming in saying, well, that's not how it's done. Mm-hmm. No, that shouldn't be relevant.
You choose.
You choose. It's a choose your own adventure. And and that's where the most interesting art is created, in that space. And I think we'd have a lot less of a sort of bland, homogenized landscape if we stopped trying so hard to be like other people. So just do your own thing. Do your own thing.
I can definitely get behind doing your own thing. Thank you to everyone watching on YouTube. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. That always helps. And share the episode with your friends. Sharing the episode always helps. Once again, Marlon, thank you so much for coming on the show. But until next time, everybody, keep it classy.
Cheers, Johnny.
You've been listening to The Johnny Rogers Show. New episodes air every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.